Welcome to the Time is Right podcast. Time is Ripe is a digital journal podcast of Ripe Creatives. Ripe Creatives is a ministry that leverages the arts for the purpose of missions here in Philadelphia and around our region. Time is Ripe is hosted by Ripe Creatives founder Scott Smith and features various guests from within the Ripe community and our extended family. Each episode focuses on a specific experience that our team hosted here in the city or an outside event where someone from our team was booked to perform. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Y'all might have lost your way, but I'm still out here living my purpose. Know that I'm the best to do it when I'm living the service. Once you see light, you understand.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to The Time is Right. This is Scott Smith, and today we have a really special episode where we go back in time to Friday night, February 21st was the date, 2025. I got a couple of guests. We're going to be talking about this thing that we love and talk about pretty often here on the podcast called Two Lines Philly. Both are returners. One is more like a host, less like a guest, because he's here on most of the episodes that we record. He's here for all of them, but he's on most of them. That would be Jarrett Mop Moses. What's goody?
You was good.
The legend. Jarrett produces and does everything for this podcast. Without him, it wouldn't exist. We also have another returner. He's been on a bunch of different episodes over the years. First time on season 4, though. Woo! Mr. Greg Snow, welcome back to The Time is Ripe.
What's up, Time is Right? Glad to be renewed for season 4.
Your contract's still under review.
Netflix is signing the deal. It's going to be a great time, y'all. We got an amazing episode planned out today as we talk about this thing that we love. I was going back looking at the list. We've done, 50 episodes or whatever. I think it's 4 or 5 have been about two lines, going back to season 2. I think season 2 we had a couple, season 3 we had a couple. Most recently we did the one about AVG and his feature back in season 3, December. So the last episode of season 3 was with AVG. But turning into the new year, Two Lines happens pretty much every month. And so every month we could do an episode. We don't want to do that, but we do want to pick out certain events that are really significant. And I think this February show is definitely one that we wanted to highlight to all of you. A lot of cool things happened, as a result. Now, Greg, this thing happens on Friday nights. Talk to us about Two Lines overall for the people who have never heard about Two Lines before. This is their first episode. Tuning in. What is Two Lines Philly?
Two Lines is a place where a bunch of Christians, my friends and I, we just created an event where poetry happens and a little bit of everybody comes. We don't censor it to create space, really for God to move through both believers who come, we need to get refreshed, and anybody, poets, non-believers, people who just want to come and enjoy a good night of poetry, and they also get loved on, opportunity to pray for them, and just care for people in relationship, and we love good poetry.
Yeah, shout out to Two Lines. It's been a thing that's been happening for a handful of years now, which is amazing. Shout out to you, Greg. Longevity, being faithful over the long term. But more recently, within the last couple of years, it kind of became a branch of Ripe Creatives in the same way that Creatives Philly is an event branch of our ministry, Ripe Creatives. Two Lines kind of falls under the same mode. And as Greg was saying, like, this is a third space event, trying to build relationships with people and connect with them. We do produce some overtly Christian events like oracles or our block parties or our good soil events. Those are like for the church, sometimes in the church or out of the church for the church. But Two Lines Creatives Philly, like, it's our way to just build relationships, with artists and creative types that may or may not identify, with God or with Christianity or with Jesus. And it's just kind of a way to rub shoulders with folks. We talked about this on the last episode, but Jarrett, where does this Two Lines event happen these days?
It happens at a fancy little place called Mop Savage Studios. No, it's cool. It's fun because it's my studio space, and I'm really happy to be able to host Two Lines here. But it's even more of a fun turnaround because I was the sound guy for the very first Two Lines, and so getting to come back into it's really cool for me.
It's been a joy. Yeah, Two Lines lives at Deke's Barbecue in the summertime.
Yep.
But then, being outside is no longer a thing in Philadelphia after a certain threshold.
No.
And so once it becomes too cold to be outside, they move it over here to Mop Savage Studios. And it's just been, I think, a match made in heaven. I know I've been advocating for it for some time now with Greg. I was like, I think you should just do this. And you guys worked it out together. And I think it's a blessing all the way around. Certainly a blessing for the audience. I think they have really communicated
absolutely.
that it's been amazing.
Absolutely. I think many of our audience members that have followed us from venue to venue to venue would say that Top Mop Savage is their favorite place. Like, they love it. They feel like it combines everything of Two Lines and everything of a good quality venue, period, and just brings it together. And I just want to say publicly, Jarrett, we're so thankful for you allowing us to be in your space and, create this event together. And collab on it and really take both creative minds and put it together for something that really blesses the whole bunch of people, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely an excellence side to this whole thing that I challenged for a while because I said the Two Lines production needed some love. And I was argued with pretty consistently.
I mean, we toe the line between higher production and warm, family vibes. So I think here we do a really good job of doing both of those things.
I thought it was more you guys just trying to embrace the Philly dumpster fire aspect.
And we were kind of broke for our first 2.5 years,
Absolutely. Doing things on a budget. You gotta, sometimes you just gotta figure it out.
We're able to make it work.
But the growth of Two Lines has been crazy for that, though. So props to you guys for sticking through those hard times with it. Where it was tight. Yeah,
I mean, you really just kind of, we I remember the very beginning, we were just pulling Jarrett and Jeff, shout out to Jeff, and I were pulling out our wallet, paying Jarrett off our own money, figure there was no money coming in. We were just pouring into this thing. And so thankful to see the investment of what has happened, not in the numbers or really the financial gain for us, but really the relational gain and the spiritual gain that has happened over the last 4 years. So
yeah,
it's been good.
Yeah, I think for all of us, the hope with events is not really to make a bunch of money, because I don't think that that's a realistic goal anyway if you want to reach people.
No.
But it is to if you can get close to breaking even on an event, then you can do it again.
Yep.
Right? If it's not a net loss, because at some point, if you lose $1,000 every time you open the doors, after 50 shows, you've invested $50,000, and that's $50,000 that you could probably use to do a whole lot of other stuff. So you got to be wise. And I think it's been cool to see Two Lines get to a place where actually it's sustainable. Because of the growth and the folks that are coming and being a part of this, and then the relationship with Deeks as well in the summer, I think is just a great situation. So, but let's talk about this February show in particular. Amazing stuff. You guys usually run open mics. At one point you tried slams out. You realized that that's not your vibe.
No.
But in August of last year, you guys did an anniversary showcase.
Yep.
And you guys decided to bring the showcase thing back in February. What led to the decision to do a showcase in February?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. One, we wanted to have some separation between our August showcase and and then another showcase. We're okay, February, that's 6 months, and we kind of always think in advance. So we're we want to do another showcase for the anniversary, but it would be cool if we do a second one. So we have 2 showcases a year, at least starting out, to kind of mix things up from the open mic, the regular, kind of rhythm. And also, the winter months are usually pretty good for us. So we wanted to couple that with a bunch of good quality poets, people that we want to see more from. And so generally when we go into a showcase planning, it's who do you like? Who have you seen come out to a Two Lines? Who have you seen in the other events in the Philly poetry scene? And who do you want to see a whole set from? Not just from a poetic standpoint, but who do you want to share their story on our mic is kind of the things that we think through and we process through. And I think when we came up with this lineup, and even when we came up with, okay, we're going to do a showcase, it's because we feel the need to give people their own space, more than just a regular 12-person open mic. Then you have one person we're sharing their story. But hey, let's hear from 3-4 stories back to back. And from August, we just saw like that's powerful.
Yeah, the August one was phenomenal to the point where we were like, we need to do an episode about this. And here we are again after the next showcase. So apparently every time we do a showcase, we'll do an episode about Two Lines here on the podcast.
Yeah, catch us in August.
Yeah, every 6 months we'll be here on the futon stalking. I thought it was really great. I felt like I missed the open mic going into the night. I was like, dang, I don't know why they're not doing an open mic tonight. But it was amazing how you like still had that component in new ways and planned ways and not planned ways, while also showcasing these handful of artists. Give me the run of the features first, and then we can talk about what you actually did pre-show.
Yeah. So I'll say our features that we selected are Aisha Hicks from Virginia originally, has moved up here from Pennsylvania, and we never even had her on a Two Lines show yet, but she always comes out and so supportive of Two Lines and also of our friend AVG, who you've maybe have seen in other episodes. He's a fellow Right poet, and of me. And so we're just like, we got to have her, because people that give so much to us, we want to give back to them. And the next person was Kerwin Sutherland, who is just a legend in the Philly poetry scene, especially Philly slam scene, and is a believer. And I'm like, hey, I'd love to see what he can do, on an open mic with us in February or in this showcase, I mean. And, so it was like, all right, let's have Kerwin, let's have him come out. And I know he hadn't been performing a lot, but I was like, maybe he'll do it to come to our space, because we're a little different than the average, poetry event. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And our last feature was actually with us last July, The Truth to Poet. And she's just a phenomenal poet altogether. Also believer, also just good spirit. Like, she's just really cool to hang out with, to talk to. And last time we had her was with a guy named Red Lion. And so she was our opening feature for that night. And so we're like, hey, we want to bring her back for this showcase. And we also want her to close the night, because we kind of put her next to Red Lion, which whenever you're with Red Lion, you know that you're going to be outshined, just because he is an amazing, talented performer. And so we're like, let's make this space all about the truth at the end of the night.
Yeah, The Truth is phenomenal. And I hear what you're saying about putting her next to Red Lion, but she holds her own.
True.
I'm going to be honest. The Truth set, we'll get to it, but even just as a poet in general, she's phenomenal. She's from Baltimore as well.
Yep.
Baltimore in general just creates great poets, I think.
Absolutely.
The ecosystem down there is insane. And shout out to Kerwin. Kerwin's, as you said, a legend, like, has books out, been a published author for a long time. I remember him from like the Pigeon 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's good to see him again. And then Aisha, more new on the scene in Philly, but also very much in the slam scene.
Yeah.
Very much in the competitive poetry scene. So what a crazy lineup from just a talent perspective. But you also had a fourth artist. Who was the fourth?
Yeah, so this was my main man, Renwick Dewsbury. Man, what a name. Golly, the name alone should have packed the house out. Renwick is a guy that I met up at this thing of friends of ours called The Ology. They do this event called Rounds, and Renwick and I happened to be on the same event. And he does this. He is from Guyana, and he does Afro Caribbean vibes, and he'll do some slower songs too, and just kind of almost like he's rapping, but then he's dancing, and he's just such a fun guy. And even just his personality, I was like, I'd love to have him do an event sometime. We were up near New York, but he's like, oh, I live near you guys in Philly, actually. So I'm like, well, yeah, we want to have you again sometime. We're going to bring you to our event. And so when the showcase came up, I'm like, hey, let's consider this guy, Renwick. And our whole team was at the event in New Jersey, and they're like, oh, yeah, let's bring him out. Let's do it.
Yeah, and I think it was cool because he's not a poet. He's a singer. He's a rapper, artist type. But I think that was really cool how it gave different dimension to the night, where instead of having 4 really great poet sets, you had 3, but then you had a music artist that you dropped in to split things up. And I think there's some funny stuff we'll have to share about Renwick as well. That's just hysterical from my vantage point. But before we get to that, you know, Greg, one of the things that I think centers us for this podcast is we want to make sure that we only do episodes about stories that are worth sharing. And the big question that we're always asking is like, how did God move, or what's the lesson in a particular event? Something happened leading up to the show and then the day of the show that I think was really significant. This was probably the most panicked I've ever seen you leading up to a Two Lines.
Yeah. And for context, like, I'm generally not panicked about like tickets and stuff. Like, it's usually something I'm like, well, people will come, you know, and we'll kind of figure it out. But this was a showcase, so we were like in for a lot of money. Then we do more lower end events from a financial standpoint. And on Monday, I looked at the ticket count, and we were at 2 tickets sold. Now we were running a like 2 for $30 deal, so it was like those 2 tickets were actually maybe like 3 or 4 people. But from my vantage point, it was like I have 2 people coming to this thing, and I have X amount of money that I need to make back, because like we said, the goal is to make even, and we were nowhere close to even. And feeling in my own life just pressure and feeling overwhelmed of all this stuff that has to happen, and then starting to feel guilty of like, did I not do as much? Could I have done more? What's going to happen? Like, is this a blow? Should we just never like do showcases ever again? Like, this is all the things that are spiraling in my head. And then I get to about maybe Thursday, and I'm just praying with God. I'm like, Lord, like, we've gotten maybe up to like 10 tickets at this point, after I've like pleaded to multiple people, like, please buy tickets, please come. DM. Like, I'm like begging, like, please just show up. And so when we got to that moment on Thursday, like, I was just praying, and I felt like God was just like, I got you. Basically, you know, I'm like bringing all this stuff out to God. I'm like, it doesn't feel like anybody's coming, and I'm stressed out, and what are we going to do? And God just kind of like when has this stopped you before, kind of thing, of like, you like have been in situations where you've needed me, you've called out to me, and I've delivered. So what makes this situation different from any other time? And it's just like, okay, but actually voicing that to God, like, Lord, I'm scared. Like, I'm scared that I've made a big mistake. Because I'm the leader of Two Lines in many ways. I have an amazing team that builds around me. But when it comes down to it, if there's a decision that's made that's a good decision or a bad decision, ultimately, like, I'm going to take the weight of that decision personally. And so I think it was a lot of me giving that weight to the Lord and being like, hey, like, yes, you have put me in this position to lead. And so I'm going to be led by you so I can lead. I'm going to surrender this to you. And your success story tonight, God, might not be that, or the next night might not be that we have 50 people in the building. But you want us to do this. It's happening. So something needs to happen tonight. And I just let it go at that and was like, basically, I'm content if we only get 15 people, and it'll still hurt, but it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember leading up to that evening. It might have even been Thursday or Wednesday. You were texting me about like, oh man, I need to talk to you about this on Monday, about how like poorly the showcase was going from a marketing standpoint. And I remember telling Greg, I was like, Greg, why don't we just debrief? Or you wanted to talk even ahead of the show, like of what we can do better next time. I was like, Greg, just wait till Monday. Like, wait until after the show, because you don't know what's going to happen. And that's been our experience with creative so many times. Mm-hmm. We've definitely had nights where we expected an influx late and we didn't get one. But we've definitely had a lot of shows where 90% of the tickets were sold the day of.
Yep.
And that is Philly. And we loathe this about Philly.
Yeah.
But it's just the way Philly
So
is. Like, there's this lack of commitment until last minute.
Please buy a ticket the day before.
Yeah,
please.
They just get them the day up. But what ended up happening that particular night, February 21st, was unbelievable. And I think it's beautiful that you said, man, I was content no matter what would have happened because I worked that out with the Lord and just trusting him. But it might have been the most packed Two Lines I've seen at Top Mop Studios since you made the move over here.
I think so. It was crazy. Like, people just came flooding in, and like, usually when I'm up I'm at the mic and I'm looking out, I can see like clear like gaps, and I'm just looking out and there's like, maybe I see a seat here, a seat there, but it's like, it's full and it feels full, you know, and it's like, whoa, I did not expect this. And it's not just full from a people are in seats perspective, but the audience is lively and excited and passionate about poetry and passionate about being in the room. And I was just like, whoa. And God's like, well, here you go. You know, now, you know, he's laid it out, and now we gotta walk it out and follow through.
It was really fun. It was fun to watch you experience that in real time. And I think one of the funniest things that this leads into a decision you made pre-show was because there were so many people there that was unexpected. Like, so many people were there. Two Lines has this tendency of like starting kind of late. You're waiting for the Philadelphia late arrivals crowd to get there. But this was like actually the first time you had a whole full room, and we're still 30 minutes from showtime.
Yep.
And so you get up on the mic. Did you plan this at all? Like, or was this just totally while you were up there, you made this up?
I was a bit planned.
Okay.
When I was downstairs at the door letting people in, I made it up. And then I walked up and then I did it.
I was about to say, I don't know how much communication was there, because I remember Jake sitting in the back next to me and he just looks up from his phone and is like, we're doing what?
He's like, what is happening? I'm down.
So what did you got to explain what you actually did.
I'm down at the door and I'm like, I know there's people here, and we have this tendency to just let people sit. And I'm like the lively, I'll talk to people person, and I don't want people to just like get on their phones. That bothers me, man. Like, when I'm in a space and everybody's like just on their phones, like, and there's all these people in the room, it's like we've lost the art of connection a bit. So I'm like, we need to bring this back. And so I text our team and I'm like, hey, what if we try this thing? So I get their permission. I'm like, hey, what if we try this thing where if people want to do a new poem, they can just come up and they can just perform on the mic. And cause I'm like, I got a new thing I'll do. So I know at the very least, I'll do something. And then if other people, you know, go along with it, then we have something here. And I was like, we'll start at like 7:15 and then we'll start at 7:30. And so then I come up and I'm like, Jarrett, can you bring down? And they're like, okay. And then Jake's kind of like figuring out what to do. And I just get up there and I'm like, hey guys, we're going to try something new. So, and it was a showcase. So the reason why I felt like it was so important was because we said we do 3 openers, but then other than that, everybody else that's in the space, they're just going to be watching the whole night other than our Two Lines poem. Like, they're not going to be able to perform poetry. So I was like, I'm going to give you guys a space to perform poetry right now so we don't waste this time. I'm like, if you have a new poem or even a piece of a new poem, like, you can just come up and you can just share it. And so I just started and I did something and I said, but here's the thing, no intros. You walk up, you perform it, you sit down. And then it just went.
And it was amazing. I mean, I would say probably all 15 minutes were just full of random pieces from random poets.
Yep.
And you happen to have, I mean, shout out to Kerwin, right? Shout out to Aisha, shout out to The Truth. Those 3 are going to bring poets to their feature.
Yep.
So most of the room is poets.
Yep.
And most of the room is like some of the top poets in the city of Philadelphia.
Pretty good.
Right? Like, really talented people. And then they're on stage just workshopping new stuff. It was absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, Jake was pretty funny though.
Yeah, Jake saw that there were 15 minutes, so he decided to take 10 of them to do his poem.
Jake was like, 1 minute? I can't do that. I'm starting at the beginning. He
I
did
can't
the whole
count
joint.
that high.
He did his whole story.
It was great. It was great.
An awesome poem.
But he did do the whole poem. But I think it would be great to keep it to like 60 seconds. I think you said 90 seconds, which is probably fair. But it gives a chance for like just artists to connect. And it didn't overpower to the point where the features got any less focus.
No.
Because it was so quick and so like not about the poet. It was just about the poem. I think it really worked well.
Yeah. I'm excited for us implementing that in future two lines. Just like one of the things that was cool about it was once you performed that, in that workshopping space, you can go to somebody and be like, hey, what did you think of that? Or someone can come to you and kind of help give you feedback, which that stuff is so invaluable. And I think it also presented a very raw moment for people where it's like, with poetry, sometimes like you don't want to perform, especially spoken word, you don't want to perform your unfinished, your raw stuff, the things you haven't even like performed anywhere, like you're still trying to figure out if it's a poem, if it's any good. But to create a space that's already has the trust of the community to where, I can come here at two lines and I can do that piece and I'm going to be loved. I'm going to be taken care of. So I can even open up something that's a little more vulnerable or a little less polished.
Yep. I thought it was dope, man. And then, right after that whole thing, you actually kick off the show. The room is packed wall to wall. You had 3 lottery style open mic slots. So you did a basket, kind of what we do for Creatives Philly. And you came up and you pulled 3 names, and then we get into the actual artist sets. Hysterical thing from me is that I had no intention of dropping my name into the basket for that. And I felt convicted while I was sitting here. I was probably the last person to put their name in because I felt convicted that, man, how many times at Creatives have I said to people, just leave it up to God. Like, just put your name in and whatever happens, happens. If you're not meant to perform, at least you put your name in, like as a way to coax people into taking a risk to maybe be an artist that they didn't know they were. Yep. And so I felt like kind of convicted. I was like, I have a poem. I have thought about taking that poem to other spaces. I haven't taken it anywhere since the first time I performed it. And like, let me just put my name in the basket. I'm probably not going to get picked anyway. And lo and behold, Simone brings the basket up right after I dropped my name in. She gave me a look like, you put your name in? I was like, I did. And then it brings it up and you pull the first name and you're like, you've got to be kidding. It's Scott Smith.
I lost it. Yeah. That was funny. I mean, how did you feel, one, getting pulled, but then getting to perform that poem again in same event, but clearly different audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece that the first time I had just written it, and I workshopped it at Two Lines about 3 months ago or whatever. And it, like, I wasn't done with it whenever I workshopped it. I definitely didn't have it memorized. I was reading off the phone type of situation. And I have committed the piece, I thought, to memory pretty well. And I was like, I want to try to do this piece from memory and in a performance kind of way somewhere. But it's also like, it's kind of a poem that's a shot at the poetry community in some ways.
Yep.
And what I've seen in it that I think is like some things that are toxic about it, namely like themes that we would never want little kids to hear, right? Or like young people to be navigating in their eardrums and just being like, what are we doing with this? Because this is perpetuating outcomes that we say we want to be changed in society. We say we don't like sexual assault in society, so why are we doing poems that may actually create those kinds of outcomes?
Yep.
And so it's a piece that's like kind of a, it's a punch. So I think even more so than how did I feel about it, it was, I want to see if this poem really matters to poets. And what better place to do that than Two Lines? And then, performing it, you just don't want to mess up and all that kind of stuff. You want to make sure you actually have it committed to memory. But really, you want the emotional piece of the message to get across. Because I didn't want it to come across as like me versus you, or us versus them, or faith-based poet versus non-faith-based poet. I wanted it to be a heart cry, was kind of my goal with it. So I don't know how it went from your guys' perspective, but it was great to do it.
And it was awesome. I think it was a good way to kick off the night and kind of move us, when we went from our openers up into our showcase. Like, I think you just opened the night really well, and I could tell poets, even specific people I was like looking at, like, I wonder how they're taking this right now. And I remember talking to one guy, and he's just like, yeah, I think that's Scott's favorite piece for me ever. And I'm like, wow. Because in some ways, this piece was kind of directed to him. And I'm like, okay, maybe the Lord's doing something here. So I think that was really cool from this is a cool piece. It was a fun night, but also this piece had some, I'll say it, not loosely, prophetic voice in it that is for people in the room to really take on to that and look at how they're living their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an honor to do it. I love 2 Lines. I'm always going to be here, but I definitely was going to bypass putting my name in that basket. And looking back on it, I'm really thankful because I do feel like that piece is a part of my catalog now. And I don't know if I would feel that way until I had done it again.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I have another bullet in the chamber. When God asked me to do something, I have another thing that I can bring out depending on the space. So it was fun. It was fun to take a concept and walk out with like catalog. I was like, amen. I love that feeling that, okay, this one's here. Like this one's in my heart and I can carry it anyway. And, shout out to Link one NK. He came up to me. He was very kind. He was like, that's the best poem I've heard all year. And I was just like, I appreciate that, man. Like that's super humbling to hear, especially somebody who, listens to a lot of poetry, intentionally goes to a lot of events, to get that kind of affirmation, tells me that it's doing what it's supposed to. But thank you, Greg, for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Let's get off of me. Let's get out of the open mic. Let's get to the features real quick. I want to honor these people and just talk briefly about each of their sets. And I want to laugh about Renwick because Greg is ridiculous. Who was up first on the feature? And it was...
Man, Aisha Hicks, she's incredible. And, I've seen her a couple times at 2 Lines perform, and I'm like, that's really good. But again, there's something about when you give somebody 5 minutes versus when you give them 10 to 15 to 20 minutes and they can curate, okay, I'm going to do this piece, I'm going to do that piece. She was just excellent. And you could tell like she was having a fun time. She was enjoying being here. She's told me on numerous occasions that she loves this space. And you could see that in her set. Like she's like, I love being here. I feel like I'm home and I'm going to like just go off. And she did this one piece about her father loving football, but neglecting her and her family. And it was insane. And she just kept looking at me, Greg, time out, time out, time out, like connecting to the piece using football metaphors. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like breaking the fourth wall, like just incredible stuff. She is really talented. And also it was conveying a serious message.
That piece was absolutely phenomenal. Like bar none, one of the better pieces I've ever heard. Especially in the sense of like wordplay with a message, which is like, I love that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of dumbfounded by how good it was. One of the things I wanted to remark about her set in general though, and I think this is a testament to the 2 Lines culture, is she walked up on stage and she said, I want to do something I've never done before for one of my features. And it's actually so beautiful because it's from a place of vulnerability. I trust this room enough to try not having a formulated list of poems in my head. I want to just do whatever comes to mind first.
Yep.
And so she kind of just let the room almost dictate what pieces she did and curated a set that felt cohesive, but it wasn't planned.
Yep.
I thought that was so cool. And I just looked at that and I was like, man, where else would you take that kind of risk with a featured set? As a poet that's like, she's a poet. Like she really does this.
Yeah.
And it's a part of her livelihood. It's a part of her like world. Gets a feature and was like, I want to try something new here. And so I just wanted to affirm that. And I think she would say the same thing. Why she did it here is because this place is just trustworthy. It's like a warm, loving family vibe, open mic or showcase in this case, that she felt safe,
Yeah, we take our role as a family reunion very seriously. We want people to feel like they're home every time they come into our space.
Yeah, it was super good. After Aisha, Renwick does his first set.
Yeah. Renwick, man.
Renwick, not a poet, he's a singer. I don't know how to say this because it was beautiful and amazing, but it also made me laugh so hard. So you got to explain it, Greg. Like, what does Renwick do artistically? Maybe Jerry, you got to chime in here because.
And Renwick is a Jesus singer. He is a worshiper. You could even say a revivalist. You know, he is like just about Jesus all the time. And he was very clear in his set that that's what he was about. That's what he was for. And I will say, there was this like weird thing on my part where I'm like, usually if someone comes into our space, which we try to keep it, kind of not churchy from a standpoint of we don't want to, kind of put anybody on the defensive. We want to create avenues for Christ to shine through, but we don't want to put anyone feeling like I'm out of place, right? We want to always have there be a space. But with Renwick, it was like, I feel like you got to just love this guy no matter what. Like, I don't feel like you can take this guy and be like, I'm just like, I don't want any Renwick. You know, I don't want any of what he's giving me here in his voice and his tone. He's coming up smiling, just like very authentic of this is who I am and I'm going to be who I am. And so I had this like kind of blind, almost confidence of like, I think this is going to be okay.
It was great. It wasn't just okay.
No, he did great.
He was amazing. But I do think that you did not tell him what Two Lines is at all.
I feel like we talked, but I feel like he did not understand what really was happening.
There's no way you told him.
And in some ways,
there's no way you explained.
I'm glad I didn't.
I'm
glad I didn't.
I think the sovereignty of God is that you didn't explain it well, clearly, because I think he believed walking into the space. I think he thought this is a Christian poetry event for church people, and we gonna turn up and have worship in here, and like in a way that happened. And it was very invitational to people to like he was like telling people like, cry out to Jesus. You know? And I was like, oh my gosh, Greg, like this is the wildest thing you've ever done. Like this is the wildest moment you've had in Two Lines lineup history. But it like, because Renwick is so sincere, it wasn't forced or showy.
No.
It was very heartfelt. One of the songs I think he did was like about a testimony of God's provision when his family went through tremendous loss and not knowing where to turn and like, you know, asking God for provision, and he provided peace and joy and satisfaction and love and hope. Like God's provision isn't necessarily restoring what was taken from you, but it's restoring your soul.
Exactly.
It was like really good. Anybody can identify with that message, right? That like when you turn to God, he shows up and gives you himself, and the things that you get from him aren't natural, they're eternal. And I think that message got across. I was cracking up though watching it happen. I was like, there's no way Greg called this, man. I was like, Greg, how do you not call him and explain this space to him before he walks up there? But it did work out. Shout out to Renwick. He did a great job. After Renwick's first set, we had Kerwin.
What can I say, man? Kerwin Sutherland was a great poet, and I appreciated him with his vulnerability and authenticity. And he was able to just be like, hey, there's this book I wrote, and I really wanted to do this book, and then COVID happened, and it kind of ruined my promotion. It ruined the space I was going to do all these events. And so, again, just this, I want to share this personal thing that I wrote with you. And we see that theme, not just tonight, but every time that we do this event. And so I'm glad that Kerwin felt comfortable, and he's excellent poet, and he did more of like reading the poetry, which I think was kind of cool. We had like this, we went really up high with Renwick, and then we came down and we kind of got to sit and listen to the words.
Yeah, Kerwin's a beast. And he dealt, I mean, I think he has an infinite amount of sets he can do. Like, honestly, like, he has so many pieces for so many different spaces. But based upon the book and the readings he didn't get to do during the pandemic, right, just kind of wanted to share, like, some pretty heavy stuff. Like, some very heavy themes around justice, around race, around loss, around frustration, like speaking truth to power in ways, which, like, that is a big part of the poetry, spoken word scene. And I thought he just delivered those pieces incredibly well. Yeah, I did not realize Kerwin was a believer until even just processing through the night and hearing that from other folks in Two Lines. And I was like, man, that's amazing that a believer is willing to dive into those themes as deeply and as, like, honestly, and kind of punch you in the face as Kerwin does, which I think is beautiful. You know, shout out to Kerwin, beast of a poet. If you don't know him, you know, look him up. He's been around Philly for a minute. After Kerwin, we jumped back into Renwick, did a couple more songs.
I will just chime in here. A moment that was pretty fun was I was out talking to someone at the moment, and I just come back in, and everybody's like waving shirts and waving like whatever they can, and Renwick's like, wave it, wave it, wave it. And then I'm like, all right, let me just jump in. So I like rip off my sweater. I have another undershirt on, like just a t-shirt, and I just start waving my sweater in the air and jumping around with Renwick, and that was like a whole lot of fun.
It was not your typical Two Lines poetry artist experience with Renwick. Shout out to Renwick, man. He just did his thing, man. He was super lit. And I think it was a perfect, like, reset between the poets.
Yep.
You know, and I'm sure other music artists and different genres or different messaging might have been great too. But I think it was beautiful that, you know, Jesus kind of got to be center stage in some ways through Renwick and through the art that he does. But it also got to be like a palate cleanser before the next poet.
Yeah. I mean, even people, like, the response to Renwick was, like, really cool. Like, there were several people that are not believers at all, like, and they're just like, I loved him. Like, he made me cry, or he really can do this thing, or he was just a joy to have here. Like, he was some people's highlights of their night, and they probably didn't even know that he was coming.
Just like Jarrett. It's so good. Shout out to Jarrett for doing things on the fly. The last poet, briefly, it would be easy to spend 30 minutes on this set because it was phenomenal. The Truth, the poet, so stinking talented. Like I said, honestly, like, this was one of my favorite sets I've ever seen. And I've always thought the Truth was good. Like, she has amazing poems that I've enjoyed. I've been a fan of her for some time. I think I put it on Instagram, actually, that it was one of the best sets I've seen. Like, I would put that set in the same class as Brandon Leake's Voices in Power set.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, in the class. You know what I mean? Like, whenever I think about feature sets that I've seen that I was like top to bottom, no drops.
No drops. She killed it.
She's talented, but then again, Two Lines, that last piece. And I don't think we're allowed to talk about the intricacy of the piece a whole lot because I don't think it's out yet.
The piece did not exist.
Oh yeah,
but we enjoyed it.
I think she was unveiling it at a future event, but she felt so safe in this space where all these other people were expressing their vulnerability to do, in my opinion, the most vulnerable piece I've ever heard from The Truth. And I felt like it was so raw and so real. And I was just like, wow, this set was phenomenal. Like, I was just blown away. I was like, you are really good. And the fact that she's a full-time poet, I'm like, yeah, you are the standard of, like, what does it take to be a full-time poet? Your skill set better be there because that's what it takes, is that level of excellence. She is amazing.
Yeah, there's this quote I love from a poet friend of mine. He's like, you know, there's a poet that you see them perform their feature and you're like, you pull out your phone and you want to like record them as much as possible. And then there's the poet that makes you forget you even have a phone. You know, that you were just so lost into the poetry and lost into what is happening that you don't even like life kind of pauses and you're just like there and they have your full attention. And that's what happened with The Truth. Like she just like was excellent and down to earth. Like it was like, I am up here. I am on this level of excellence when it comes to poetry. And I'm also your friend. And I'm also going to talk to you one-on-one and really like be honest in my poetry about what's going on in my life. And that was just like so amazing. And even in all the pieces that she did, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Shout out to The Truth. I was blown away, man. I freaking loved it. Every second of it. And then, after her, you guys did a little spotlight situation for Smiles, who was going to be the next feature. And then you guys did the 2 lines poem and wrapped up the night. I just want to, briefly ask kind of Greg, especially from your perspective, I saw a lot of the fruit of the event, even just in you, like going from we're at 2 tickets, we're at 6 tickets, we're at 8 tickets to whatever God's going to do, he's going to do. And then it ended up being a packed house, like one of the biggest 2 lines you've ever done. And I just saw that like faith was grown in you as the leader of this thing. And I felt super encouraged by that. I was encouraged by the poetry, but I just want to ask, like, what fruit from the night, did you, see or hear about, from February 21st?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of to what you said, it's like when I want to gain a great poetry event, when I want to gain 2 lines as much as I can, I lose it. I lose myself. But when I lose the outcomes, when I let go of the results, when I let go of what's going to happen, I actually gain so much more because we let God come into the room and be with us and commune with us and have a time where we're not concerned, and I'm not concerned about controlling things. And I think that's just such a beautiful message, because the other thing is we have these conversations and they're amazing. And then we go a whole month until our next event, and it's like, Lord, like, what is happening with these conversations? Like, are people actually growing, or are we just doing events? And I think I just am reminded of the parable of the mustard seed. Now, there's a small, tiny seed, and that Jesus says that that's what the kingdom of heaven is like. You drop it in the ground, nothing, no results, no outcome, no big flash, and then it grows into this massive, massive tree where all who can find refuge. And I think that's what's happening, and that's what happened again on February 21st.
So good, man. It's been fun to watch this thing just be a blessing to people, like in a real way. It is a good thing. And I know we've talked about it on so many instances, like even just in the natural sense, like it's been like a suicide helpline for folks that are struggling with self-harm or, struggling with suicidal ideation, or just whatever. Like there's so many folks come into this room really hurting.
Yeah.
And I think like 3-4 years into this thing, you're looking at some hearts are like changing. Some conversations are like people are more whole. And I would say even, maybe you can argue with me theologically in this, but in the sense of like living into their imago Dei-ness, like they're more human than they were 3-4 years ago, the first time they walked into a space.
Yeah.
But like love is cracking open some things in some people's hearts. And you're just like, man, I don't know exactly how the gospel is going to get in here. I don't know when they're going to have that altar call moment for them and Jesus. We'd want to like get them there right now, but that's not always the way that God does things. No. But you're just like trusting, okay, I'm seeing God begin a good work, and according to his word, he's going to bring that to completion. So we already are like watching the victory happen before we see it in its fullness. Like there's a promise that God's going to finish what he starts. And you can see him starting a lot of beautiful things in a lot of people's lives.
Yep.
And 2 lines is an extension of that. And I'm really excited, man. Like I think it's been beautiful to be a witness of it. And I'm really hopeful for what the future holds with this thing.
Amen.
Shout out to you guys, man. Greg, you're a beast. You did a great job hosting as always. Thank you to all the features. Thank you to everybody who came to the February Two Lines. Listen, Two Lines will be happening every month. So get your tickets, get out here to either Top Mop Savage Studios or Deke's Barbecue or wherever the heck you guys go. Who knows? Knowing you guys, you're probably in 17 more locations before we're done. But it's been a beautiful ride. Make sure you guys connect with it. Follow Two Lines Philly on Instagram. Get connected. Come check this thing out. Last thing is just say thank you to our partners. Without your support, we don't get to do stuff like this. So thank you for giving so that we can produce events and make an impact on people's lives. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Until the next time, stay right.
Boy, that's it. Yeah, I'm done with the games. I thought this was
You can learn more about Ripe Creatives and support our ministry by visiting our website, ripecreatives.com. To never miss a future episode, you can join our community text line by texting Time is Ripe to 215-273-3540. Time is Ripe is produced, recorded, edited, and released by Top Mop Productions. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
living my purpose. Know that I'm the best to do it when I'm living the service. Once you see light, you understand that sin is whack. Be aware, wolves plotting on the next attack. Armor of God, give me the word. I'm always strapped. My brother's able, never question if I got his back.